Welcome back, beautiful, beloved souls. My name is Jem Stone. I am a psychic medium and I am an author. And on this channel, you will find I mostly do commentaries. Every now and then I do a PowerPoint, but I look at anything and everything to do with life and death through a lens, hence the name of the channel. So content, like I said, varies. I have a particular interest in consciousness. All right, before we get into it, have you checked the Schumann's resonance today? There's a lot of activity going on, and that led me to doing this particular commentary, and it's deciphering the Philippines and Venezuela through a psychic spiritual lens. First, before we talk about it, my heart and sympathy goes out to everyone in the Philippines and Venezuela re the recent earthquakes. So, before we begin, I want to make something very clear. Everything I share in today's discussion is based on my own. Sorry, a minute.
This is a reminder.
She's always doing that, isn't she? Right when I'm in the middle of my talks. All right, so I want to make something very clear. Everything I share in today's discussion is based on my own spiritual experiences, intuition, remote viewing impressions, and personal beliefs. These are not statements of established fact, and I always encourage you to use discernment. Never accept anyone's interpretation, including mine, without thinking it through for yourself. I am always telling you and talking about healthy skepticism and questioning everything, plus discernment. And discernment is one of the greatest spiritual gifts we have. We're going to explore two countries that on the surface appear to have very different histories, cultures, and political situations, the Philippines and Venezuela. Yet, when I quietly focused on both locations through meditation and remote viewing, I noticed fascinating energetic similarities. Whether these impressions reflect an objective spiritual reality or simply symbolic patterns arising from the subconscious is something every viewer must decide for themselves. Let's begin. Looking beyond politics. Most news stories explain instability through economics, corruption, resources, ideology, or foreign influence. Those explanations may all contain elements of truth, but I often wonder if there is another layer underneath. Could humanity sometimes be experiencing events that have both physical and spiritual dimensions? If consciousness influences reality, then perhaps entire nations also possess collective energetic fields. Perhaps countries carry memories just as individuals do. Perhaps historical trauma leaves energetic echoes, and perhaps periods of unrest are not simply collapse, but transformation. Two nations connected. When I focused on the Philippines, the first thing I sensed was movement, water, wind, volcanic fire, emotion. Everything felt alive. When I shifted my attention towards Venezuela, the feeling changed. Instead of movement, I sensed pressure, like energy wanting to move but becoming trapped. Again, I cannot prove these impressions. They are simply what appeared during meditation. One nation felt like flowing water. The other felt like a river blocked behind a dam. Both eventually release enormous energy. My own experience with the earth. Something happened last year that really made me think. I live on Queensland's Sunshine Coast in Australia. Australia certainly experiences earthquakes, but compared with many countries, they are relatively uncommon, and it's even rarer for us to actually feel one. About 80 kilometres northwest of where I live, there was a magnitude 5.6 earthquake. For many people overseas, that might not sound unusual. For us, it certainly caught attention. It reminded me that the earth is never completely still. Sometimes it feels as though the planet itself is breathing. Whether earthquakes are purely geological, whether they carry some symbolic spiritual meaning, or whether both ideas can exist together, I honestly don't know. But experiences like that certainly make you pause. So let's talk about the Schumann resonance. Like I just said at the beginning, earlier today, I looked at the Schumann resonance graph, and you can find it if you just put in Google search, and it will come up with a graph, and the graph is showing very bright like up graphs. I'm not describing it very well, but like that, waves. And that means it's very active. So many people within the spiritual communities associated periods of increased activity with shifts in collective consciousness, while scientists generally describe the Schumann resonance as naturally occurring electromagnetic resonances produced between Earth's surface and the ionosphere. Those are two very different interpretations. I think it's important not to confuse one with the other. Still, whenever I notice unusual patterns, I become curious. Could humanity become more emotionally reactive during certain energetic periods? Could people become more intuitive, more anxious, more inspired? These remain open questions rather than established conclusions. Spiritual pressure. During remote viewing, I kept receiving the image of pressure building underground. Not just geological pressure, spiritual pressure. Imagine shaking a bottle of sparkling water. Eventually, the lid has to come off. Perhaps collective societies work similarly. Old beliefs, old systems, old corruption, old wounds. Eventually, something has to give. The release can appear chaotic, but chaos sometimes precedes renewal. The shadow within nations. Whenever people hear phrases like dark forces or spiritual parasites, it's very easy to imagine literal invisible beings controlling governments. Personally, I think we should be cautious with that interpretation. Sometimes the parasite may simply be fear, greed, hatred, division, trauma passed from generation to generation. Those forces certainly feed upon human suffering, whether we view them psychologically or spiritually. Perhaps the greatest battle isn't against external entities at all. Perhaps it is against the lower aspects of ourselves. Ley lines and energy. Many traditions describe the earth as having energetic pathways. Some call them dragon lines. Others call them ley lines. Some indigenous traditions describe sacred places where earth and spirit feel unusually close. Whether these energetic pathways literally exist remains unproven. Yet, across many cultures, we repeatedly see sacred mountains. In Queensland, we have near Cooktown the Black Mountains, and the Aboriginals avoid the Black Mountains. They're not so much sacred. So in many cultures, there are sacred mountains, sacred rivers, sacred caves, sacred trees. That consistency made me wonder whether ancient people sensed something modern science has not yet fully explored. During meditation, I sense the Philippines and Venezuela acting almost like balancing points within a much larger energetic network. Again, that is simply an intuitive impression. The young generation. One thing I found fascinating was the role of young people. Whenever I focused on both nations, I repeatedly saw younger generations carrying an entirely different energetic signature, less interested in old divisions, more interested in cooperation, more connected globally. Perhaps they represent a transition between old systems and something entirely new. History shows that younger generations often become catalysts for enormous social changes. Earth changes. Many people ask whether increasing earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and unusual weather carry spiritual meaning. Science explains these events through plate tectonics, atmospheric systems, and natural earth processes. Those explanations are well supported. Some people also believe such events carry symbolic or spiritual significance. These two perspectives are not necessarily mutually exclusive. The Earth can be a physical planet while also inspiring spiritual reflection. The collective soul. One idea I often return to is that perhaps humanity learns collectively, not just individually. Entire nations experience lessons. Entire cultures heal. Entire generations evolve. Maybe what appears as hardship eventually becomes wisdom. Perhaps resilience is one of humanity's greatest spiritual teachers. Looking towards 2027, as I quietly reflected, I didn't see endless darkness. I actually sensed increasing transparency, old systems struggling to maintain control, communities becoming stronger, people asking better questions, citizens demanding greater accountability. Whether this unfolds exactly as I sense remains to be seen. Remote viewing is not certainty, it is exploration. Practical spiritual advice. If you live anywhere experiencing uncertainty, here's what I personally find helpful. Spend time in nature. Walk barefoot if it's safe. Reduce fear-based media. Meditate. Pray if that aligns with your beliefs. Connect with family. Help your neighbors. Eat well. Sleep well. Acts of kindness create surprisingly powerful ripples. Sometimes changing the collective begins with changing our own household. Final thoughts. If there is one message I hope you take away today, it's this. Do not surrender your discernment. Whether information comes from governments, news organizations, psychics, scientists, or YouTube creators, question everything, including me. Healthy skepticism and an open mind can exist together. Perhaps that's the real awakening. Not believing blindly with extraordinary claims, nor dismissing unusual experiences either, but learning to stand calmly in the middle, observing, questioning, learning, and continuing the search for truth. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If today's discussion gave you something to think about, I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. Please remember to keep the conversation respectful. We all see the world through different lenses, and sometimes those different perspectives help us notice pieces of the puzzle we might otherwise miss. All right, before I finish, I have to just plug one of my books. This book was channeled between 2003 and 2015. At the moment, it's in its 6th edition, and it's called Seeing the Spirituality Behind the Negativity, a Menu for the Game of Life. And I'm going to be very brief here, it discusses that Earth is an illusion, that we are co-creators and the creation. Someone wisely put it, we are the universe experiencing experiencing ourselves. So we are the universe experiencing itself. And also, in my book, Seeing the Spirituality Behind the Negativity, a menu for the game of life, it discusses how Earth vibrates. So we're all vibrating at a frequency, and it has to be in balance. So when the Earth is vibrating low through anger, acts of unkindness, and negativity, the Earth vibrates low. So because it vibrates low, it's out of balance. So what usually happens is we have a disaster, a catastrophe, and that then, because say in an earthquake happens, we then become kinder, we help each other, we pour out love and pity to those who've lost everything. And because then we are vibrating at a higher frequency, it puts the Earth in balance. But should we all, because this Earth is a solid, dense, that's how we created it. We created it out of matter, and we created it a solid, dense force for opposite and opposing forces to act on it. Remember, I told you, if you were living all the time in light, you wouldn't know what dark is. So it's opposite and opposing forces. So likewise, if every single person on this earth was all too high vibration, the earth is out of balance again. So another catastrophe happens to get the earth in balance. Now, I would suggest that you go to Google and have a look at what the earth is doing today. The scientists have a graph and they can measure it. And like I said, the lighter parts, and the graph goes like this, the lighter parts is showing the earth is very active. Now, a couple of years ago, I predicted last year, and my predictions often are wrong, that the San Andreas fault was going to go. I still believe that's going to happen, but I've extended it for a couple of more years. And when it goes, it's going to be big. So, remember, every time you hurt someone, you are hurting yourself. Because, like I said, we are the co-creators and creation, the part of the infinite I/we, or the universe experiencing itself. So when you hurt somebody, you are hurting yourself. So with that, please be kind to one another. Smile at a stranger. It costs nothing to be nice, and you might save a life. Please take care of yourselves. And it's a cold one today. For us, only going to a maximum of 19. Now, let me know where you live and let me know about your winters. I'm not yet smack in the middle of our winter. That's next month, so it's going to get colder still. All right, please take care of yourselves because you matter. You are precious. Love, light, and blessings. Till next time. Bye.